All right, speaking of families and how they lived, let's talk about family structure. Um, because a lot of the way we sort of assume the world works today is not really true. And in fact, even patterns of living which we might think today are traditional probably aren't, actually. Throughout most places in history, you probably have relatively large families that take care of each other. In some cases, this is more of a tribal thing, where you have a whole extended tribe that lives in one place, and so everybody's interrelated to one another a little bit. Think of a Native American tribe, where the whole tribe is like one big, huge family. But even in, say, medieval Europe, where you have a nuclear family, right, a father, and a mother and kids, there probably is extended family nearby. Your neighbors are quite probably your cousins. More traditional kinship or traditional immigrant groups that come to America, they often hang on to this for a long time. Think of your stereotypical Italian immigrant family coming to America. At least this used to be more of a stereotype. I don't think it's as true anymore. But there's a grandma and a mother in the household, and they're always cooking spaghetti, and you come into the house and they just throw huge amounts of food at you, and it's always a big loud boisterous dinner, and there's cousins and aunts and uncles coming in from every corner and nook and cranny, right? And it's this big extended family where everybody takes care of each other and everybody looks out for one another. That's a lot more common. Today we have this idea of the nuclear family of two parents and two kids and a house and a dog and a white picket fence. In many ways, that's actually very new. It's very recent. And here's a simple thing. Today, we move for the sake of education and jobs, right? You grow up somewhere, then you go off to college in another part of the country, and then you might go get a job somewhere else, get married, settle down, and have a family. And all of a sudden, you're putting down roots there. It's actually really new and really weird. That many people don't have grandparents really close by. Now, maybe some of you do. It's really helpful to have extended family close by. It's much easier to engage in work or to do things to make money if grandparents can help watch little kids, or aunts, or older sisters or something. And then as members of the family get old, the family takes care of them. Today, we have what we might call a social safety net or a welfare system. If you're really in trouble, you can't take care of yourself, various charities or increasingly the government steps in to do some of that. And when you get old, the government provides things like Medicare and Social Security. Well, in a pre-modern world, maybe there is no government, or the government is really far away and it's a king who doesn't have the money to take care of all of his poor peasants, and he wouldn't do it anyway because he doesn't care about them because they're peasants. So this is what I like to call the "what do you do when you break your leg" test. In a pre-modern farming community, if you break your leg, you turn to members of your community or your family to take care of you and get you back on your feet. And you expect them to do this because you know and they know that next year they might break their leg, or their roof might blow off in a storm, or they need help building a new barn, or retrieving lost animals that have broken down, that have gotten away when the fence falls down or something. And so the family has to really look out for one another, and the community has to really look out for one another. So a large family in the community, they will be the social safety net. They will take care of each other. Well, I already wrote that. So where today we have a big government welfare state, in part because people can't take care of one another. People go off and live in the big city by themselves and they're completely alone. And if you break your leg, you don't have family close by to take care of you. That's why you vote for politicians who promise you that the government will do that sort of thing. So that's a big difference. Extended families, taking care of one another, providing that sort of support. What else? Okay, here's a funny one. Men, in this sort of world, pre-modern world, men are expendable. Women are not. Okay, ready for this? Sorry, guys. If we have a traditional community and we lose a bunch of men, like in a war or a farming accident or fighting off wild animals or something, the remaining men, if they can marry the women and have more children and bring the population level up and the society can take care of itself. If you lose your women, in a community, that's it. Women, have children, and that's what brings the population level of a community up. And so pre-modern society can kind of afford to lose some of the men, not obviously all of them, obviously, but some of them. But the women are really important, really valuable. This is why women are, in so many traditional communities, women are seen as protected. They're kept away from the men. They're kept away from foreigners. This is why they don't fight in war. I mean, also the fact that there's in war in the pre-modern world is much more physical and intense. Today, a woman can drive a tank or shoot a gun, or fly a plane. The physical element is still present, but not as much present. So men are more expendable. So this is why you protect your women. Which explains part of the reason why women are sort of kept separate. Another thing about this is a big one that we don't appreciate enough. In the ancient world, you work at home, right? If I'm a farmer, I go out into my fields, but it's on my property. If I work in a shop, my shop is usually also my home. Most ancient cities, the shop will be like the storefront that faces the street, and then you'll live in a back room or on the second floor. You will work at home, which means you generate economic value at home. Unlike today, post-industrial revolution, we leave home to go to a factory or to a modern office building to engage in whatever our work is. And so this is a funny thing that happened in the Industrial Revolution. Men started going to work, and women stayed home, where they had always done, where they continued to work and actually generate value. And so we have this notion of, in a traditional family, like the man goes to work and the mother stays home and takes care of the kids or something. But in the pre-modern world, women are generating economic wealth just as much as men. Consider a woman sewing clothes for the family. Today, that sounds like a cool, traditional thing to do. Or something, aristocratic, like women in a Jane Austen novel, doing their their needlepoint do or something. In a pre-modern world, you are making clothes for the family because there's no other way. There's no market to go buy clothes at. Or if there is, it's going to be really expensive. That's an essential household good. A woman who can, take a slaughtered pig and knows how to preserve all the parts of it and cook with it and make it last for months, that's a hugely important skill that, might make the difference between starving this winter or not, So we have this notion of, men are the breadwinners. Men bring home the bacon. But women engaged in economic activity just as much as men did. In fact, the word economics originally comes from a Greek word which means the running of the household. That's right. Women are the first economists. And in fact, they engaged in business and economic activity all the time. In some cases, especially say in the Middle Ages, we have lots of instances where if a man had run a shop or a storefront or something and he died, the woman took over and ran the business. We have records of women who voted in medieval town councils because they were business owners, right? Which I think that surprises a lot of people who they don't know this stuff. And women could, in some cases, own land. And if you were a wealthy family in, say, the ancient world or Rome or Greece, you have a big, large estate where you're going to have a lot of hired hands or slaves, actually very often slaves, who don't do all the work. The women of the household run the household. The man is supposed to be out doing politics, right? He's supposed to be out in the forum, talking with other Roman senators, or he's off making war, right, for the glory of the empire, that sort of thing. Meanwhile, the woman is running the house at home, and she's hiring and firing slaves and servants and managing them, and she's actually overseeing, all of her agents who go and sell the family produce to merchants. In the Bible, the book of Proverbs talks about the ideal woman in Proverbs 31, and one of the things she does is buys land and conduct business transactions. Yeah, really. So here's a big thing that a lot of people, I think, miss about the ancient world, especially in that sort of situation. A woman in that sort of environment, she's much more like a CEO, more like a businessman, because work took place in the home. So in a weird way today, when we talk about how, now, men, go to work, and increasingly women do as well. So it's, for many of you, your father and your mother might work, or a woman might have children, and then while the children are young, she stays home with them, and then she goes back to work. In a certain sense, that's actually kind of a return to the historical norm, which is kind of interesting. Okay, of course, one big difference in this is that, yes, generally women are not involved in politics because they were at home making money or raising children. Now, in the ancient world, like an ancient Greek or Roman city-state, politics usually means things like war and diplomacy. Women can't fight, so it was sort of seen as like, well, they don't have a say in that as much. So certainly, it makes sense then in the modern world then that women get the right to vote. But yeah, right. So certainly women didn't generally have political rights in the ancient world. And sometimes they might not even get a say in who they marry, although I think more often than we tend to assume sometimes. Okay. Shucks. How are we doing on time? Let's pause.